of Congo battle a flood of medical misinformation with tragic consequences. We'll have a report from Goma. And it's the season, and Washington, D.C. is decorating the U.S. Capitol for holiday cheer. All this and much more coming up on today's Africa 54. We begin with the horrific cyclone that ripped through French archipelago of the Mayotte in the Indian Ocean. French officials say several hundred people, maybe even thousands, may have been killed. Africa 54 managing editor Vincent McCory has more on Cyclone Chido.
Video released on Sunday by the French gendarmerie showed the wreckage of hundreds of makeshift houses after the most powerful cyclone in nearly a century struck the archipelago of Mayotte in the Indian Ocean. A top local official told a local outlet that several hundred, maybe even thousands, may have been killed by Cyclone Chido. Asked about the death toll of several hundred, the French Interior Ministry said it will be difficult to account for all victims and said a figure could not be determined at this stage. Cyclone Chido swept through Mayotte overnight, according to the French Meteorological Administration. The forecaster said the storm brought winds of more than 124 miles per hour and damaged makeshift housing, government buildings, and a hospital, adding it was the strongest storm in more than 90 years to hit the islands. Mayotte's islands have been a focal point for illegal immigration from nearby Comoros. In recent decades, thousands have attempted to cross from Comoros on the east coast of Africa to Mayotte, which has a higher standard of living and access to the French welfare system. According to the French Interior Ministry, over 100,000 undocumented migrants live in Mayotte. Some 77% of the people in Mayotte live below the French poverty line. The cyclone went on to hit northern Mozambique on Sunday. Vincent McCory, VOA News.
Meteorologist Matthew Capucci with the Capital Weather Gang tells VOA's Carol Van Dam Cyclone Chido also made landfall in Mozambique, where it brought flash flooding and downed power lines.
So the cyclone right now is weakening over Mozambique. It's kind of removed from the warm waters of the Western Indian Ocean. And as a result, its winds are sort of filling in. It's like a whirlpool that starts to weaken when you stop stirring. So that's happening right now. The wind's not really much of a factor. But the bigger issue, the rain. It's moving over northern Mozambique. That area is all kind of sand and very desert-like. And when you have a big dumping of rainfall like this, the flooding can cause big issues. Now the island of Mayotte saw winds gusting upwards of, say, 230 kilometers per hour at its peak. They saw a direct landfall, the equivalent of a high-end Category 3 to a Category 4 hurricane. You can imagine that hitting an American city and causing massive devastation. Imagine a place with lesser infrastructure. It will take months, if not perhaps years, for the island to fully recover. And unfortunately, I think we still don't really know the scope of just how bad the damage is.
That was meteorologist Matthew Capucci with the Capital Weather Gang speaking to VOA's Carol Van Dam. In an exclusive interview with VOA's Paul Ndiho, Ghana's President-elect John Dramani Mahama discusses some of the country's most pressing challenges, from revitalizing the economy and managing the national debt to addressing the urgent issue of youth unemployment. Mahama shares his insight on the path forward. He also highlights the crucial role of education in driving growth and the profound implications of illegal mining on the country's resources and communities.
It affects every sector of the country. So we're going to have to be dealing with stabilizing the economy. Unfortunately, in this circumstance, we have two major issues. One, macroeconomic stability, and two, debt sustainability. In all the other times that we've gone to the IMF, it's just been for macroeconomic stability, but we have twin problems now. And so we're going to continue the IMF program. We already have requested some discussion with the IMF because we're not part of the negotiation of this program. And so we need to look at how we can all be on the same wavelength in terms of implementing the program. We're not going to jettison the program. I want to make that clear. We're not jettisoning the program. But within the program, I'm sure that there can be some leverage for tweaking it. And so if we're able to reach that agreement, then we'll continue the program till it ends. What it means is that the budget must align with the IMF program. So there's not much leverage in there for making the kind of radical reforms that you might immediately need to make.
That was Ghanaian President-elect John Dramani Mahama speaking to VOA's Paul Ndiho. UN Syria envoy Geir Pedersen met on Sunday with Syria's de facto leader Abu Mohammed al-Jolani. Al-Jolani leads the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, the Islamist group that swept longtime autocratic ruler Bashar al-Assad from power. Hayat Tahrir al-Sham is a group formerly allied with al-Qaeda that is designated a terrorist organization by many governments and is also under United Nations sanctions. Pedersen says he hopes for a swift end to the sanctions to help facilitate Syria's economic recovery. In a statement, Syria's ruling general command, Saeed al-Jolani, discussed with Pedersen the need to reconsider a roadmap outlined by the Security Council for the country in 2015. That resolution calls for a Syrian-led process facilitated by the United Nations that would establish a non-sectarian governance, call for free and fair elections, and set a schedule for a process of drafting a new constitution. Both father and son have been accused by rights groups and governments of widespread extrajudicial killings, including mass executions within the country's notorious prison system. As reports emerge about Abu
is a Syrian guy who joined Al-Qaeda in Iraq during Zarqawi's time, the 2004, 5, 6, and he fought over there. He fought, of course, against U.S. troops. That's when he won his notorious fame for being one of the jihadists and got a $10 million bounty on his head. When the Syrian revolution and eventually civil war broke out in 2011, he moved back to his home country, Syria, and he started the Al-Qaeda franchise in Syria, which he called Jabhat al-Nusra. And incidentally, this Jabhat al-Nusra engaged in war against another Al-Qaeda type, which is ISIS, after ISIS came into existence in 2014. So you have ISIS and Nusra going after one another. Now, shortly after that, in 2015, it was the first time that Al Jazeera put him on the air, maybe trying to rebrand him or present him to the world as this sort of a guy who's not as scary as he might seem or sound like, as someone who is fighting ISIS. And since then, we have seen journey in which Abu Muhammad al-Julani rebranded himself into a moderate guy. Now, mind you, in his most recent interview, he said all the right things. He said that he didn't envisage Syria as a autocratic place or as an Islamist place. But behind Shara, formerly al-Julani, he had two flags. One of them was the Syrian Revolution flag, and the other one was the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham flag, a jihadist flag. And to me, this is a red flag, no pun intended, of course. So there are signs that there are remnants of jihadism, including the flag, including foreign fighters in his militia, including a few other things and signs that are of concern to people like me and others.
Both father and son have been accused by rights groups and governments of widespread extrajudicial killings, including mass executions within the country's notorious prison system. As reports emerge about Abu Muhammad al-Jolani, the Syrian rebel commander who helped oust Bashar al-Assad, questions surface about his transformation from an al-Qaeda operative to a key figure in Syria. Hussein Abdul Hussein, a research fellow at a Washington-based think tank, the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies, discusses al-Jolani's journey from fighting U.S. forces in Iraq to leading fighters in Syria, his rebranding efforts and his role in Syria's conflict and the broader region. He spoke with VOA's Betty Ayub on what al-Jolani's rise means for Syria's neighbors, U.S. interests, and the Middle East. Israel launched dozens more airstrikes into neighboring Syria over the weekend, claiming ongoing threats to its security. Syria's new leadership calls for those threats a false pretext, adding that it has no desire for a new conflict. VOA's Arashar Basadi explains.
These are the twisted remains of some 15 naval vessels leaking fuel and half sinking in a Syrian port. The Israeli military launched hundreds of airstrikes into Syria in the week that passed since the fall of President Bashar al-Assad's regime. Israel says the strikes targeting strategic weapons and military infrastructure are essential for its security, so rebel groups cannot use them. Rebel chief and de facto Syrian leader Ahmed al-Shara, formerly known as Abu Muhammad al-Jalani, calls that a false pretext. But he adds his group, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, or HTS, has no interest in engaging in a new conflict. The focus instead, he says, is on rebuilding the nation. The United States and other governments have designated HTS as a terrorist organization. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken made an unannounced trip to the region this week and discussed the future of Syria.
As Syria transitions from the Assad dictatorship to hopefully a democracy, it does so in a way that, of course, protects all of the minorities in Syria, that produces an inclusive, non-sectarian government, and does not become in any way a platform for terrorism.
Neighboring Jordan hosted high-level talks this weekend expressing support for the transition process in Syria.
We all stand with Syria in this reconstruction phase to build a state that preserves the rights of all Syrians without exception, a state that respects its sovereignty, unity, and territorial integrity so that Syrians can live in the security, peace, and stability they all deserve.
Despite the diplomatic push to rebuild Syria under new and more moderate leadership, Israel's defense minister says threats to his country remain. Since the end of the Assad family's 5 decades of rule, the Israeli military began occupying a demilitarized zone inside Syria that was created after the 1973 Arab-Israeli War. The European Union will meet this week to discuss engagement with Syria and the country's rebuilding. Arash Erbasadi, VOA News.
In the city of Goma, a group of Congolese journalists are battling a flood of medical misinformation that can have tragic consequences. Reporter Zanem Neti Zaid has this story from Goma, the Democratic Republic of Congo.
These journalists working in Goma are fighting a flood of false information about war and disease in a region plagued by conflict and health care challenges. Fact-checkers at the Congolese publication Eleza Fact fight misinformation like the myth that mpox, previously called monkeypox, doesn't exist and is merely scabies. Aline Kataliko says their work is vital to public health and building trust.
There are rumors about monkeypox that say, for example, that the vaccine is aimed at the extermination of the Congolese people. We are already observing the dangers of these rumors as they can harm the whole community and prevent the disease from being eradicated.
Since 2021, the 25 journalists at Eleza Fact, including Joël Alimasi Kitambala, have been raising awareness about the dangers of misinformation.
To verify facts, we put in keywords, and every time there's a post containing these keywords, we get notification on all of the publication concerned. If they feel the need for it, they assign a fact-checker team member who starts working on the organization in question.
Eleza Facts articles are published on their website, shared on social media, and broadcasts via local radio stations to reach those without internet access. A lot of the misinformation involves medical conspiracies, similar to the one about Mpox. Journalist Joylene Kazimoto reported on misinformation about COVID-19 in these podcasts.
In Kinshasa, the city where I live, I noticed a general reluctance on the part of a category of the population to join the fight against COVID-19, as many don't believe in the existence of this disease. Most of the people who are doubtful are those on the outskirts of the city.
Editor Daniel Makeke says these efforts are important in combating disinformation.
Nous sommes en collaboration avec certaines radios communautaires.
Radio stations relay the podcasts, which raise awareness of diseases and epidemics, how to get treatment, the truth behind the treatment, and the origin of monkeypox, etc. In this way, we can reach even those who do not have access to digital technology, who are being helped by the results of the verification work we are carrying out.
Makeke says ElezaFact project's efforts help prevent the spread of false news, which can have harmful consequences. Zanemneti Zaidi, VOA Africa, Goma, Democratic Republic of Congo.
President-elect Donald Trump has selected Brendan Carr to lead the Federal Communications Commission, which regulates communications in the United States. Carr, an FCC commissioner since 2017, has been a huge critic of big tech and China's influence on U.S. communications. VOA's Dora McCoy reports.
Brendan Carr is President-elect Donald Trump's choice to lead the Federal Communications Commission.
Aye. Commissioner Carr?
Aye. The agency regulates TV and radio broadcasters, telephone and internet providers, and satellites. Carr is currently a sitting FCC commissioner and longtime staffer.
What's clear is he has a lot of experience. I believe he's been there since 2012 as an attorney, and he's also been pretty transparent, which is good. He both has a pretty good sense of, or very strong sense of how the FCC works and how things get done there.
Trump describes the 45-year-old attorney as, quote, a warrior for free speech. Carr wrote about the FCC in the Conservative Policy Priority Handbook, Project 2025, saying that social media companies suppress certain political views, and he wants to police TV networks for bias.
Americans have lived under an unprecedented surge in censorship over the last couple of years, and we have to work together to smash the censorship cartel. Number two is media. Trust in media is at an all-time low, and there's a lot the FCC can do there to make sure that broadcasters are, in fact, serving the public interest.
Those amendments are being criticized as potential infringements of the Constitution's First Amendment right to free speech.
One of the things that he proposes to do is actually force those private companies to leave up content that advertisers and others find offensive. So, in other words, using the power of the federal government to force certain kinds of speech to be hosted by private companies.
Carr also wants to get internet access to more Americans, and he's expressed national security concerns around China-made technology and equipment providers, as well as the Chinese-owned social media platform TikTok, for possibly gathering information about Americans on behalf of the Chinese Communist Party, or CCP.
The CCP doesn't come at the U.S. and our freedoms through any one particular vector. They come through all sorts of devices. They come through all sorts of services. That's why it's important that we be vigilant.
Those national security concerns are less likely to be controversial for the 5-member bipartisan panel that Carr will lead.
There's already some funding in place to what they call rip and replace, to pull out some network equipment that's in place already and replace it with what's considered to be safer.
Shortly after Trump designated Carr to lead the FCC, Carr announced that the agency will end its diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. Dora McCoy, VOA News, Washington.
We're excited to hear what you think about Africa 54 and all our VOA Africa programs on our website at voaafrica.com. Still to come, Washingtonians decorate the U.S. Capitol for Christmas. We'll be right back.
health, wellness, sport, beauty, medical breakthroughs. Healthy Living cares about your well-being. What are the main health concerns in Africa and around the world? Find out the latest on coronavirus. Connect with our experts and ask them questions.
How long does the virus stay?
Join me, Linor Moudou, in Washington, every week on Healthy Living, right here on VOA.
In times of change, when the world seems uncertain and what we hear doesn't reflect what we see, we seek the truth. When we are told only part of the story, we lose trust. In moments of crisis, our dreams, hopes, and wishes for a better tomorrow depends on a free press. At Voice of America, we bring you the stories that people take risks to see. We connect the world and unite it with truth. At Voice of America, we show you the whole picture.
In other news, one of Libya's main refineries in the west is being shut down after clashes between local armed groups erupted early Sunday and caused fires on infrastructure, according to the NOC state oil company. Several tanks at the Zawiya refinery, the only one in western Libya that supplies the local market with fuel, caught fire, according to videos posted on social media before being brought under control. And Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan says he will visit Ethiopia and Somalia early next year after brokering a deal to end tensions between the two Horn of Africa neighbors. Ethiopia and Somalia agreed to end their nearly year-long bitter dispute after hours of talks brokered by Erdogan, who hailed the breakthrough as historic. The holiday season is underway here in Washington, and the U.S. Capitol is decorating for Christmas. Decorations and pageantry surrounding the season come from all corners of the United States. VOA's Anthony Labruto takes you on a tour of some of the famous locations dressed for Christmas, some heartwarming meanings behind them.
For many Americans, the official start of the holiday season begins at a Christmas tree farm, like this one in Newland, North Carolina. Trees are cut, bundled, and brought home, ready for decorations. But this tree, a Fraser fir, is going to a special home, the White House. First Lady Jill Biden chose this tree specifically.
Here in the western North Carolina, where we've experienced this horrific hurricane and flood, they would want this tree to represent the faith and hope and love and joy and family and generosity, all those good things of mankind that we need to stop and recognize that's what they would want this tree to represent.
A few months ago, Hurricane Helene hit North Carolina, destroying nearly everything in its path and killing 96 people. Sam Cartner Jr. owns the tree farm where the Bidens chose their tree. He lost as many as 6,000 smaller trees in the storm, but he hopes the resiliency of the one in the White House will be a symbol of hope for all those in the area.
This tree recognizes your tremendous strength and service. In just a few days, volunteers from all over the country will pour in to transform this tree and decorate the entire White House. And out of the whirlwind of glitter and garlands will come the warmth and comfort of the season. I can't wait for you all to share in it.
Using 2,900 meters of ribbon, 28,000 ornaments, and 165,000 individual lights, 300 volunteers brought to life the vision of the 2024 White House Christmas. Jill Biden addressed members of the military as well as the volunteers, taking a moment to reflect on what will be the Biden family's last Christmas as residents of the White House.
So standing with all of you, I remember the first time we walked across this threshold right over here on Inauguration Day, and the gravitational pull of history guided us forward, wrapping us in the centuries of stories that live here in this house.
If you're not one of the lucky 100,000 people who are expected to visit inside the White House to see their Christmas decorations, don't worry, there's still something for you. Right here on the National Mall, just in front of the White House, there's the National Christmas Tree. Surrounding the National Christmas Tree are 58 smaller trees, representing the 50 U.S. states, 6 territories, and 2 schools managed by the U.S. Bureau of Indian Education and the United States military. School children from across the country made the ornaments decorating each tree, and every ornament is unique to the place each child calls home. Now, these Christmas lights outside, as well as the ones inside the White House, will be staying up through the new year. Anthony Labruto, VOA News, Washington.
Great reporting there, Anthony. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thanks for watching.